Introducing the new Apple iPerson complete with multi-touch. Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? Compatible with your iPod and your iPad. Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? No friends? There's an app for that. No life? There's an app for that. You are complete. We don't know about that yet. Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? My world has become so digital, I have forgotten what that feels like. It was difficult to connect when friends formed cliques. Now it's even more difficult to connect now that cliques form friends. But who am I to judge? I face Facebook more than books face me. There are no more metaphors. I uploaded to a metaverse. I met my wife and I wrote a verse to remember what I met her for. 444 spaces to prove I'm still breathing. Failure to do this daily means my web-wide world will forget that I exist. But with 5,000 friends online and only 5 I can count in real life, why wouldn't I spend more time in a world where there are more people that like me? Wouldn't you? Here, it doesn't matter if I'm an amateur person. I have a profile. My smile is 50% genuine and 50% genuine HD. You would need Blu-ray to read what is really me, but I'm not that focused. 10 tabs open, hoping my problems are resolved with a 1500 by 1600 resolution, proving we may have made a few missteps in this evolution. Doubled over, we used a swinging treetops, so we swung down to stand upright, then someone slipped a disc, and now we're doubled over at desktops. From the Garden of Eden to the branches of Macintosh, apple picking has always come at a great cost. iPod, iMac, iPhone, I chat, I do all of these things without making eye contact. We used to sprint to pick and store blackberries, then we ran to a Sprint store to pick blackberries. It's scary. I can't hear the sound of Mother Nature speaking over all this tweeting, and our ability to feel along with it is fleeting. You would think headphones inject in the flesh, though we connect and disconnect, power on until we are powerless, or we love drugged. Because we do email, e-trade, emotion like e-commerce, because now money can buy love for $9.95 a month. Click to proceed to checkout. Click to X out where our hearts once were. Click. I've uploaded this hug. I hope she gets it. Click. I'm spending time with my wife. I hope she's logged in. Click. I'm holding my daughter over a Skype conference call while she is 3,000 miles away, and I wish that she was in the next room. Click. So when my phone goes over my hip, I touch, and I touch, because in a world where our laughter is never heard and our voices are only read, we are so desperate to feel that we hope our techno logic can reverse the universe until the screen can touch us back. And maybe one day it will, when our technology is advanced enough to make us human again. Thank you. My name is Marshall Davis Jones. I am here to usher in our discussion about the intersectionality between this world and the next. There's a lot of discussion about what our technology is doing. You heard what Baratunde was discussing about what it feels like between the Google Doc and going outside. And there are people who feel like the world is ending. But what we are trying to do is figure out how we can find and strike a balance. Nature, in all of its glory, has always been about striking a balance and finding a balance. And there is a digital metaverse that is emerging upon us, whether we want it to or not. But we still have to figure out and find what it means to be human and keep our humanity. And so, one of the things that we have always done is we have always been on the hunt. We have always played games to chase, and those games usually involve a ball. But there was a particular game that involved a very particular kind of ball, and this ball was a pokeball. A pokeball, for all of those that don't know, it's not a rice bowl from the Japanese spot. A pokeball is a ball used to capture creatures called Pokemon. pocket monsters that you can use to battle your friends for supremacy because my Pokemon's better than your Pokemon. But it is an offshoot of a very popular TV series from the 90s by the same name. They found a way to make an AR version of this game where you could go and travel and catch these Pokemon in real life. Now, they were not only in the United States, they were in other parts of the world as well. And someone decided that they were going to catch every single one of these bad boys. So after he caught all of them in the United States, he was sponsored to travel the world over and make sure he could catch them all, because that's their tagline. And he said, you know what? I'm game. Put your hands together for Nick Johnson, the man, the myth, the legend, and owner of every Pokemon on the planet, my man. Thank you very much for being here with us today. Let's sit down and we're just going to have a cool chat. How are you?
Thank you for having me.
Word. So, what was your first interfacing with the idea of Pokemon?
I think probably when I was around 8 or 10, when the original games came out on those old Nintendo devices we have that are now like 8 times as big as your phone is. And I played the game back then with not just myself, but kind of all my friends at the time.
Yeah.
One of them got into it and then got us all into it, and then we all got obsessed with it. And I remember weekends spent or time after school when you'd finish your homework and you'd just go and play Pokemon.
Mm-hmm. So, what was it like for you to watch? Because the Game Boy version of Pokemon, it was a very small screen, wasn't it? And the interfacing with the Pokemon is very tiny. It's like, they throw the thing. What was it like to take this small screen and watch it unfold in this world?
Yeah, I think it's still in the in-between space because, right, we still had these things.
Yes.
And we were all still doing it on our phone. So it's a bigger screen, and you were walking around the world, but you were still on a device. So that's kind of the state of technology, is that we're still somewhat in between the ability to really interact with the world directly and having a device in your hand or a screen that you're staring at, right?
Right.
But I think it was the wild part of it was the people that it brought together. Mm-hmm. If you were in New York City at the time, you would see crowds of hundreds of people. I think it's the only time you would probably see Justin Bieber apparently running into a crowd of like several hundred people to catch a Snorlax or something like that happened at the time. Yeah. And when I traveled, you'd see this everywhere. Like Japan, you'd see whole families of like elderly people that would be out, and just like 10 of them out catching Pokemon together. But some of them would also be out with like their grandkids and be playing with them. So it was pretty incredible to see something that kind of spanned generations and was actually able to take something that people did for fun on a video game console or a phone, and then actually have that bring people together to go out and explore the real world.
Absolutely. Now, it's interesting to think that there's, this discussion about us being on our small screens, and you said that we're still on our small screens and trying to figure out that intersectionality. For those that have this opinion about the power of these things, what was something that outside of the game that hit you the most about the experience? Like, it sounds like you were talking about like seeing the family, seeing the people. Is there something that you can remember that was like, I was in this place and this experience from this brought me here and gave me this experience that changed everything?
Yeah, I think the most fun part of it for me actually was the community aspect of it, where you'd have people, everyone was trying to catch this one or that one, and you'd have people like, oh yeah, you go here, and I found that here. So you had this huge community that, when you play video games online, a lot of that stuff happens online. There's forums and chat, and now there's Discord, where people form these digital communities, but a lot of that stuff was happening in physical spaces, where you'd have these groups of people. In San Francisco, I think it was Union Square. Here it was our Union Square and Grand Army Plaza were kind of the two hotspots. You'd have literally, I think, hundreds of people kind of congregated together, and it would just kind of spawn these organic conversations where you'd get to meet people that you'd never meet otherwise. I made a couple friends, just doing that. and the experience just to meet and talk with people and just people naturally helping each other without getting anything out of it themselves, I thought was pretty cool.
Absolutely. And don't these sound like some of the things that we care about, right? When we build communities, we're like, what is it that brings people together? What is it that gets people to act selflessly? It sounds like you're saying that, like, oh, look, I'm not getting anything, but I want to point you in the right direction. Where do you think we could use what we've learned from Pokemon Go and that phenomenon? Where do you think we can drag and drop that idea into for other parts of the global ecosystem?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is that a lot of people have tried to create ways to get people to use digital tools to go out into the real world, right? And or similarly, people have tried to create ways to incentivize people to go walk a lot because it's healthy. And I think I lost 15 pounds in over a month doing this because I was walking 9 miles a day. And people have tried to figure out ways to get people to engage in all this behavior, and it turned out the easiest way to do it was just to make it fun and give someone a way to play and do that. So it shows the power of play and in a social way as well, interacting with other people to get people to engage in behaviors that they might not otherwise. They might want to do it,
Right.
but to actually get up and do it is another thing. And it was pretty powerful in that respect, where it just it wasn't like it was a chore. It was like it was fun. So you had literally millions, tens of millions of people out doing this.
Absolutely. So basically, what you're saying is Weight Watchers have been doing it wrong for a while. It's like, listen, man, just put an app and send them after a Charizard. 15 pounds. You said nine. How many a day?
9 miles a day
9 miles
for about a month. Yeah.
Man, you were really committed to the mission. Were there days that you woke up and you were like, man, I'm not doing this? Like, or did you wake up every day like, yeah?
Oh, I had to sleep and eat better so that I could actually do that. After a few days, the Popeyes I realized wasn't going to cut it anymore. That I had to cut that out of my diet. There was one right next to where I lived in Brooklyn at the time, and that unfortunately, it's, you got to make sacrifices if you're trying to catch them all, right?
Absolutely. I don't know if you remember the theme song. It's like you had this, I want to be the very best. And you're like, you're right. You can't eat Popeyes doing that. Like, it's not an advertisement for a Popeyes chicken sandwich. It's definitely an advertisement for a salad.
Yeah, so it created a lifestyle change for me that,
Yeah.
where I could do that because I was behaving in a way that made that possible.
Absolutely. And so we're having this conversation because there's this discussion, like we're saying, that like here's this new world that's emerging. What do you think would need to be different about, let's say if they would do this again, what would you have wanted to see that would have been done differently?
Well, I'd say there's a good side and a bad side to getting people to engage with stuff that's played. The bad side is that what we see with our phones. There's kind of the addiction aspect of it, where people get addicted to technology in their phones, and it changes your brain. It changes the way we interact with each other. So that there's as you said earlier, there's a balance. There's a way to do it that can be positive, but if you do too much of it, then it can have a negative impact. You have, certainly I'm sure there were stories at the time of people that would chase a Pokemon into some dangerous area where they weren't supposed to be, into like a construction site, because they saw something there and they were trying to catch it, and that's probably not a good idea. Or people that would not pay attention when they're crossing the street and cause an accident. So that there's, it's not all positive, and you've got to find a balance between these things. And I think that's the challenge is, one, it can be used in a good way and in a productive way. And, in my case, I'd say it was pretty positive just in terms of the health benefits alone, let alone, the fun and anything else. But if you do it too much, and then, it can start to take over your lives in negative ways. And we've seen that with social media, Facebook and all those kinds of things, where they've got engines that are made to get us to use the thing more, even if it's not about what's good for us, it's about what's good for them, which is for us to use the thing more.
Copy that. So you said something that makes me want to ask this question. What's the most dangerous place you had to go to catch a Pokemon? Like, what project housing did you have to go to? Like, it's like deep in there. Gang territory? No, I'm just playing. Well, where was the most dangerous place you had to go?
I think probably thankfully didn't have to go anywhere I would classify as dangerous.
Okay.
I'd probably say the most esoteric place I ended up was when I was in Australia at 3 a.m. in a park, and then had to run over to the front of the local shopping district in the pouring rain and catch the last one that I had to catch, which was in front of a Tommy Bahama in Sydney, Australia. So,
Man, okay, okay. So you just had to go out into the pouring rain a couple times, but nowhere where you felt like your life was in danger. You're like, look, man, these Pokemon ain't worth it. I'm gonna stay out of the way from over here. That's cool. But it sounds like what you're saying is that the game itself was a representation of opportunities to get you mobile, to be more self-aware, to have something, to get up and look forward to, but also to observe humanity around the world, to observe community, to observe it across the generations. And the reason why I'm kind of pointing out these things, because there's a lot of discussion about how bad this thing is, this phone. But you just gave a lot of things that there are people who are like, they want to have habit change, they want to make life decisions that are better, but they're not motivated to do it. And yet, games, like going to gym in school, that kind of thing, that's like the first thing that's gone, right? The art and science of getting physical, being creative, those two things we don't even do at school anymore. But people around the world to go just chase and have the thrill of the chase were willing to gather around and do more for themselves, do better for themselves. My question to you is this: would you do it all over again from zero?
I would probably be more efficient if I knew how it was going to end up. I actually didn't go out sort of intending to be like the first one to catch everything. That kind of happened by accident and a lot of walking and some good luck, I guess.
Okay.
So I probably could have been more efficient about it. It was just the kind of thing that I'd say happened by good fortune. If I could do it again in the same way, yeah, I would definitely do it again. It was a tremendous experience, and obviously, the chance to kind of travel all around the world and meet people that shared a common interest, from countries and areas of the world I never would have met otherwise was pretty cool.
All right, now, I believe I may have. I'm looking for my timekeeper here because I have 100,000 questions for you, especially. I'm just curious where Mewtwo was.
Mewtwo was not in the game at the time, unfortunately.
What?
Yeah, it came out later.
Did you hear the gasps? Someone's like, Mewtwo wasn't. Yes, right. Because he's Mewtwo. That's why. Mewtwo was so badass that he didn't even make it into the, like, yeah, no, you're not throwing me. I'll be in the game when I want to. So that means that if Mewtwo does show up, it would be your responsibility to go catch him. Yeah. So you might not be done yet. How do you feel about that?
Well, I unfortunately I stopped playing. So this was in 2016 when all this happened. So I haven't played for a few years.
Copy that.
But I think Mewtwo did eventually show up, and I think my sisters, who were in the audience, actually pulled ahead of me at some point.
Oh!
So
shout out to this little sisters pulling ahead.
I retired and let the next generation come in and lead the charge.
That's right. Now, being that you had younger siblings, what was the one thing, and I want to land it here because I want to know what is the one thing, the lesson that you passed down to your younger sister from what you've learned by that experience, and what lesson would you want the rest of us to walk away with based on the experience that you've had chasing and catching them all?
I think for me, I think there were two things. One is that everybody plays games. There was a while where video games were seen as kind of this niche phenomenon.
Yeah.
So I got to tell my parents, hey, look, these things I didn't waste my time my whole life, right?
That's right.
But I think it's become kind of one of the good things about these phones that we've got in our pockets is they've kind of democratized and opened up the ability for a lot of people to play and interact with each other.
That's right.
And I think that a lot of good can come out of that and bring people together in a way that can be pretty powerful. if you do it right, Pokemon go to the polls, as Hillary Clinton tried. Didn't work too well, but there are ways that you can probably do it more effectively than that to harness that for social impact as well as just having fun.
Absolutely. So I'm going to press you a little bit. What did you tell your little sister when she decided that she was going to go ahead and go after it? What was the one thing you said, hey, little one, I'm going to tell you this?
She just has to remember that her older brother is still pretty cool.
All right, now, listen, first of all, thank you very, very much. Clap it up for Nick Johnson. I appreciate you, my guy. Thank you for sharing your time with us. So, let's start with some bios. We have Larissa May, the founder of hashtag Half the Other Story. Lars is a global marketing guru and founder of Half the Other Story, a nonprofit dedicated to empowering the next generation's relationship with social media. She was named 2020's Business Insider's Rising Star in Brand Marketing, launching multiple million-dollar ventures, Otherland and Kin Euphorics. She also created a grassroots community that pioneered a nationwide conversation about the importance of digital well-being for youth. Her efforts in community building have led to the founding of the Global Day of Unplugging, an internationally recognized day to divest from technology and plug back into life. Lars has been dubbed a digital wellness activist by Time, Forbes, Refinery 29, Good Morning America, NBC, the Intergalactic Star Seed Organization. I mean, everyone has acknowledged this young lady from here to Mars. To date, Half the Story has become a leading youth 501c3. I mean, okay, I'm going to go to the next bio because this one here she's got the whole book. But not just because there are less words in the next one that's coming doesn't mean it's less significant. We got Eliza Copans. Eliza Copans is class of 25 at Brown and a digital wellness youth activist serving on Fair Play's Action Network Advisory Board and Look Up Live's Teen Leadership Council. Eliza has reached thousands of people through written publications, webinars, podcasts, and community involvement dedicated to creating change towards a human, not screen-focused world. She is also co-founder of Technically Politics, a movement dedicated to changing digital regulation laws to ensure online platforms prioritize users' well-being over profit. Man, then we have Jules. Is Jules with us? Jules is a video-first content creator who covers tech and digital culture and writes advice columns for the Washington Post. I mean, come on. Now Thanasi is unable to be here with us, but we have Tim Hunter. Tim Hunter is running for public office to ensure that the people of the 43rd Assembly District have true progressive representation in Albany. Born to Jamaican parents. Mothers are, wait, whoa. Let's go to more about Tim. Hold on. He gave us the background. I want to read a bit. Hey, organizer, educator, and activist, and he's running for public office, doing his thing at CUNY Medgar Evers. Now, here's the thing. These kids is like 10, and they writing for the Washington Post, and changing the world and doing all sorts of other stuff. When I was 10, okay, I was reading the comic section in the Washington Post and laughing by myself. But enough about that. I want to invite these young luminaries to the stage. We are going to have a quick panel discussion. Clap it up for these kids. Clap it up. Hold on. Come on in. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Y'all hands need to clap a little louder. Did y'all hear what I just read? Man. Ooh, this is good. All right. So, Here's the thing. I got these questions that I want to ask you because they're good questions to ask. You were all born into a world with the internet already baked in, wasn't you? Right? Okay. So you don't. We're not really here for the like broadband DSL. Like we used to, we used to throw rocks at our computer screens to get online type thing, right? What does it mean to you to be a digital native?
Well, digital natives or the iGen, for those of you that experienced a world without technology, we did not. And to be born into a time where technology is at the center of our lives, our personal lives, our professional lives, our love lives, and everything in between, it forces us to really think hard about our identity, the role that we play in this world at a really young age and at an accelerated pace. And as a digital native, we have an opportunity that no other generation had, which is to use our voices and change the world and move from voices and advocacy in action. And I think we're sitting with some of the most brilliant activists and doers here. And that's what it means to be a digital native. It's to use our voice for good, to break through the chaos, and make the world a better place.
You've said that a couple of times, haven't you?
No.
Clem was just like, no, no, no. I'm just off
We
the
were
cuff.
speaking our truth from our
Copy
heart.
that. No, I'm listen. That was absolutely. Let's move it down. I want to hear more.
I think towards the other side of that, it also means that we're interconnected 24/7, for better or for worse, within education, within work, within our relationships. It's also just navigating that 24/7 connection. A lot of people's lives are now memeified. A lot of things become just jokes on the internet and everything like that. It's a sea of information overload, which makes you forget a lot of important information because it's drowned in like a sea of irrelevance with all the entertainment information as well. So it's navigating a lot of different layers of what the internet involves.
Copy that. Copy that. Go ahead.
I'm Eliza, so honored to be here speaking among these wonderful, wonderful activists and have such an amazing moderator as well. For me, being a digital native, you're still undergoing adolescence and all of the promises and perils that that holds, just with an added layer of existing in a digital space too. And so I think there are a lot more questions that we as young people are asking ourselves of how do you cultivate social life online and offline, and how do you strike that balance in a way that feels healthy to you when there's so many people pulling you in all of these different directions. And I think it holds so much promise for being activists. It just takes a little bit longer to figure out how we want to carry ourselves throughout both of these worlds.
Yeah, first off, it's an absolute honor and pleasure to be on a panel with such amazing, activists and voices. And thank you so much for having us and being with us today. I think that when we look at what it's like to be a digital native, can I see the hands of all those born like before 1999? All right, so we have a lot of people. So before 1999, yeah. So I was born in '99. So like as someone that has gone through, I guess, like 23 years of being exposed to, the digital age, I guess, of Facebook technology. I think it's important to note that people were having these same exact conversations, about prior years, but it's just about like the medium that we're using. I mean, we've seen the world develop at such a rapid pace like these past couple years, but it doesn't mean that the world and the way that we communicate hasn't been changing this entire time. So I think sometimes we get so like held up in the fact that, well, because now we have so many apps and so many different mediums to kind of like communicate and to interact and to build community, we think sometimes that only the young people and only those that have lived through it are these natives, but people have found ways to adapt. People have found ways to change the way that they work, the way that they live, the way that they breathe. So I think that as someone that has experienced it, I've met people that are older that are also extremely technologically savvy and sound and can talk at length about so many different things in ways that I feel like I can't sometimes. But I think that being born into it kind of puts the onus on me to make sure I'm also keeping lock and step with advancements, and I'm able to explain the importance of technology, because it's going to change the way that we interact with each other and that we view the world for the very foreseeable future.
Man, okay. Now we in the melting pot now. I have a question. What is your what is something that you've heard to finish this sentence? You are too young to. You are too young to. They're like, we never heard nothing about the end of that because we weren't even listening when they said it. No, exactly. The reason why I'm asking that particular question is because some of the things that you're interfacing with, dealing with, working in, are things that generations before, like I know, I'm sure, we weren't thinking about these things so young.
I hear you are too young to be going through all of this. I think our generation has experienced so much, and the way that I look at technology is a magnifying glass of what humanity is experiencing and the emotions within ourselves. So at a young age, 9, 10, 5-year-olds, we work with a lot of kids in our educational programming at Half the Story. And it's just unbelievable the exposure they have to the tragedy, that the climate crisis and everything we're facing. And that probably wasn't the answer that you were looking for, but I think we have to acknowledge, like, we're all going through a lot, and the young ones are experiencing it under this magnified microscope.
All right now. Is she the only one with an answer to that?
One is a truth in our country. You're too young to run for office. And so figuring out how can we still get youth voices into these spaces when laws are really going to profoundly impact us and our younger siblings and our future children.
And Tim, you actually that's your game. You're running, right?
Yeah, so like I used to be a candidate for office. I sent an updated bio, but that was like our election was in June. I ran for a state house seat in Central Brooklyn, and if elected, I would have been the youngest black state lawmaker in New York history. And it's true, I hear that a lot. But I think what I hear inside of that same vein is you're too young to understand what issues are impacting your community, and I think that that's completely false. Especially when we look at the people that are, making change happen in the wake of the shootings that we saw in Florida, in the wake of the shootings that we've seen in Texas. It's been young people and young leaders at the forefront of making real tangible change, and even on this stage, making real change in the way that we view our government and the way it functions.
Copy that. You're too young too.
I think they all beautifully covered that. I think like another side of the coin with this conversation is a growing conversation of who is too young to be posting online. I think right now what the youngest age on social media platforms is 13 years old, and people kind of figuring out if that is too young to be online. These kids have a growing digital footprint. I know I've been posting on YouTube, for example, since I was 10 years old. Luckily, I remembered the password to my account, so I was able to delete those videos that aren't necessarily representative of who I am now. But I think that needs to be a growing conversation of what age do we let kids online? Because I don't think we hear enough about you are too young to maybe be posting, or even be posting your kids at such a young age. Because even what you post of your kids is part of their digital footprint, and it can be found on the internet. So, yeah.
That's a very interesting point that you bring up about how we change. And you were like, whoa, at this age, you're like, whoa, I got to delete those videos from when I was 10 because that's just not me anymore. And I don't want someone to judge me for something that I might have experienced or expressed. So with that in mind, what does that mean to you about interfacing with an online presence, knowing that you kind of have to keep covering your tracks?
Luckily for me, because like I said, I've had like now a decade of experience of posting online, but right now with viral content platforms like TikTok, we're seeing people just get comfortable with posting online, and it's weird because TikTok is video content. It's the most like immersive, forward-facing type of content of individuals, but because it's mostly focused on following strangers and seeing strangers on your For You page, people will kind of internalize that, and they're like, oh, I can kind of share any part of my story, and they share really personal stuff through like the most personal type of content. So we're seeing over the next, I would say, next 3 to 5 years of people really regretting stuff that they went viral for, that overnight millions of people saw it and they didn't necessarily internalize that was a possibility even though they knew it. And these things are just going to follow them for life. And maybe in a moment they don't realize how important that is, but when they are approaching their 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe they are running for office and like these old posts can come up. I think we recently saw with Madison Cawthorn when he was running for, I forget what he was running for, but if you know the name, Congress. yeah. He had like old videos pop up. They were inappropriate, but that kind of just showed a little hint of he's 26, so he's a little bit older than Gen Z, but just shows a hint of what's possible there.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I think even just looking at where the digital well-being space has shifted, when I started Half the Story, it was the era of perfection, the avocado toast era, where everyone was taking photos of their food and trying to look perfect online. And now I feel like we've moved into this post-perfection world, and one in which that thrives on the shock factor. And the algorithms in TikTok are actually promoting information that isn't always true, but is getting the most engagement. And there are trends, there are things that are happening, they're actually ending the lives of kids because they want to be a part of something and they want to get a ride. And literally these dopamine hits that they're getting are training them to believe that that's what it means to feel good. And so I think we just have a lot of societal questions to ask. And at a young age, when your brain is still developing basically until you're 30, it's very challenging to address this problem when, yes, we have to take responsibility for our own use and our own actions, but on the other side of the coin, these platforms are not necessarily built to support our well-being. And so I think that that's what makes this idea of digital well-being such a complex issue, because it's moving so quickly, faster than our minds, and we're still kiddos at the end of the day.
Nick was bringing up, just the power of Pokemon Go and what he learned from that experience. About bringing people together. I'll ask you what I asked him. From observing the Pokemon Go phenomenon in what it was able to do, how it was able to get people to move, in this digital wellness space, in this future, how could you see that technology being utilized for the advancement of some of the things that are important to you?
One of the things that I learned pretty on in my work in the digital wellness sphere, which has been going on for the past 2 years, is that the way you interact with your devices has a pretty profound impact on how they're going to affect you. And so this difference between active and passive use, and passive if you're just scrolling through Instagram or you go to YouTube to watch this video and the autoplay comes on and suddenly 3 hours later you have no idea what you were just watching, versus a 2-year-old FaceTiming their grandparent that lives in a different country, or you engaging with your friends in video games and you're having conversations or watching a movie with your family, and that sparks discussion at the dinner table the next night about character development or what you think is going to happen next. There's a real difference in those things. And so how can we leverage these incredible technologies to support that active engagement and to support our shared humanity both on the screens, but then also paving the way for us to be practicing that in the physical realm as well, instead of just the goal being this sinkhole for people to spend as much time on these devices as possible for the sake of profit. And that comes at the sacrifice and at the cost of the mental health and overall well-being of millions and millions of people, especially the younger generation.
Copy that. Does anyone else want to take that question?
Yeah, I don't mind chiming in here. So, after running for office, I started working at a nonprofit called Civics Unplugged, where we work with teenagers, across the world, to kind of get them more civically engaged. We put them through a fellowship that allows them to look at immersive technology and innovative technologies and identify ways we can use it to solve complex problems. But I think that the way that we see it playing out in real time is how social media is kind of winning this battle. I think it's like we call it a species between worlds, but it feels like a battle at times, where we're competing for attention with our current reality and also our online presence. But we see it even play out on a larger scale, where the companies that are in charge, like big tech, they are now using our data and our privacy to feed us kind of like, ads, or feed us, things based on like what we interact with, on social media. And I think when we have these conversations about data privacy, when we have these conversations about algorithms and what that means, for the future of our young people and the next generation, I think all these conversations need to be centered around civic engagement and how we let people know that they can use these tools to also fight back against the same machines and the same establishments that have held us captive for so long, whether it's in getting real climate change legislation passed, or whether it's protecting a user's data from Facebook or from Instagram. I think those are the conversations that we need to be having, and tools like Pokemon Go. Nick also works for a company that examines these things, and I think that it's important that we're all like looking through our privacy agreements, and we're all talking to our young people about what they post online, because there is no covering tracks. What we put up there is up there for good, and we should all be cognizant of that.
Copy that. Okay.
Yeah, I think what's really exciting about like augmented reality AR technology is that it does complement the real world more. Right now, we're looking down at our phones constantly. Is our generation going to have like 90-degree angle necks? Who knows? But it complements the real world a lot. And how I like to use my platforms and how I really like to push other people is to utilize your platforms as like a digital portfolio. So a lot of people right now, I think it's not new news that kids today, I think it's like 60% of kids want to be YouTubers when they grow up. If that's you or if that's your kids, I challenge you to ask them to go a little bit deeper on that. Yes, these platforms can really complement your real lives, but if you only want to be a YouTuber, a TikToker, a podcaster, that's not deep enough. Like, what value do you want to bring to the internet? What value do you want to use your platform for? A lot of the best creators today can actually like have traditional career titles, whether they're journalists, whether they're teachers, whatever it is, and they use these platforms just to reach more people. So it can really, really complement your real life. It's not a means to an end in terms of just like follower numbers on a screen. Like, you can make ideal connections. A platform like TikTok, it is that like virality aspect of it. There could be one person that sees your post that could turn into an array of connections in your real life. So that is a positive from it, this more complementary relationship between tech and real life. But VR and stuff like that isn't necessarily that route.
Okay. The term activist, right? You want to activate something. And sometimes activating is challenging because the right people aren't talking to the right people, right? We have, for example, like, you're in your home and you have like the doors that you can open, but when you have a small child, what do people buy? They buy those special things, They don't throw away their doors, but they do make it a bit more difficult to get inside of them. What tools do you think need to be created, if there was one, and who do you want to talk to, or who do you feel you would need to have a conversation with? Sometimes we can speak out into the universe, right? Just out to the internet. But it sounds like there's specific conversations with specific entities that have whether it's financial means or technological means to make it happen. Who are those people for each of you? It's all right to take some time to think about that.
I'm going to cheat this question a little bit and give a two-part answer. One, I think it's the parents, and everyone is a guinea pig generation right now. We're all going through technology and this rise of technology in our pockets at the same time. And so parents don't know how to parent us because they were not 12 years old, 6 years old with a phone. And so figuring out how can we educate both young people and parents on how to foster healthy relationships with our devices, because it should not be the responsibility of the young people to know and to decide each time we're posting something, this is going to be with me for the rest of my life. That's something that needs to be baked into the algorithms and into the product design to protect us. It's something that we need to be learning from our classrooms and from our parents. And so for parents to be open-minded to the experiences their kids are having and to really work on staying true to their values while also hearing about the role that technology is playing in the lives of their young ones. And then I think to be talking to people who are inside these tech companies. And one thing that I think would be incredible to do, I don't think I have the mathematical capacity to do so myself, but to quantify the economic loss of if we are raising an entire generation of young people who are suffering from more mental illnesses than we've ever seen before, who struggle interacting with each other, who struggle to be paying attention to one task for more than 5 minutes, who's going to be carrying Metaforth? Who's going to be designing the next innovative technologies? Nobody. And so if the people inside these companies can pause for a second and think about if they want their work to be a sustaining thing, they need to be taking care of the young people who are using their platforms right now.
I love that. I was going to chime in as well. Really, a lot of our work is, I always say we're top down and bottom up. So we work on the highest of levels and the lowest because it starts with engaging and activating our youth. And so after being in this space for 7 years, which I always say, hopefully I'll be like Gloria Steinem having talking circles when I'm 80, still talking about this in whatever verse we're living in. There's just a lot of siloed work and conversation. So I think among activists and even just global change and policy, we are not having these conversations as a world. And how are we holding these companies accountable? We are working to create policies within states or certain countries that we hope will have a ripple effect, but it's still a hope and it's not a reality. And so I think our world is still trying to figure out how do we come together for digital well-being or the climate crisis like we did for the Webb telescope and make that a reality. Because if we could do that with 30,000 people and $1 billion, some of these other problems could be solved too. I think the other aspect for us, we have an educational program and we actually developed an AI research tool that allows us to really quantify and qualify what digital well-being looks like on a school, district, and statewide level. And the government is a very archaic place. And for us, it's actually quite slow moving. It's all about meeting the right person in the district, learning about, where did the funds come from in order to make sure that this program is supporting not only school systems that have money, but also the ones that don't, so that we can look at digital well-being as an aspect of digital equality. So if anyone can figure out how to connect the government to these resources so that we can make change quicker and faster, I think that would be very valuable.
Yeah, I definitely say pressure on big tech companies right now. So within our generation, on a daily basis, the power and prominence of big tech companies has been more evident than the government in our daily lives. Like, we feel it so much more. Recently, an agency that I work with, we put pressure on Google to have an advisory council of young people. And for the past year, there's been 20 young people from around the world, and they have initiated another 20. And really involving young kids in the building of these products is really important. Like, how are you going to build products that shape the lives of young people today without even including them in the conversations is pretty crazy. The power of, I wouldn't even say quote emails, but the power of the Twitter DMs can be crazy. If you pitch a group of young kids that you're these kids are smart, you should involve them in the building of your products, people are very open to that. That's not something that you can really push against. And it's just been such a growing conversation over the past 2 years, especially with the pandemic and all of our lives being so much more online. It's exacerbated so much. Incorporating young people into, building these products.
Yeah, I think that these are all really, really good answers. I think that the audience that I'd speak to are the young people. I have a little brother who's 13 years old, and I tell him every single day that this is the world that you're going to inherit. And it's important that we reinforce that because, this is a world that's rapidly changing, and we're seeing it play out right in front of us. I was just talking in the back with some of the panelists earlier. There was a New York Times article that came out about LinkedIn conducting almost 20 million studies of people over the course of the past 5 years without their consent, really. And they said that the reason why they did it and they didn't tell the people is because that once they select that they agree to the privacy agreement, you already kind of by default are participating in the social experiment that they're kind of putting forward to make their app more engaging for us, which is something that some people may be well, that's fine. And then other people may say, I would love to know about these things before I get involved. And the reason why I wouldn't talk to the people in Congress, and I wouldn't even talk to big tech about these things, is because the only folks that can fix this issue are the organizers, the young people that are going to recognize these things as issues and create their own, like organizations that will address the issues and the shortcomings of big tech and hold Congress and hold these people accountable, because unfortunately they're not going to hold themselves accountable.
If I can add one more point to that too, like to the point about the government, like what was it, 2 years ago we saw Meta in Congress and they were talking about Finstas, acting like that was a feature of Instagram and how negative that was for kids, just like completely out of touch. People haven't used Finstas in like 3 to 4 years. Like the government isn't going to save us when it comes to this big tech stuff. And the power we've seen of posting online, like Instagram just pulled back a bunch of their features because people were so loud online about it. Like what you post online does have impact. I used to think it was kind of BS when people were like, oh, like it does have an impact. And the other week when TikTok made favorites. Favorites are like the bookmarks, the saves that you have of content. It's always been a private, personal feature. They made it public. It was for about 2 days, which is a really weird thing to go against people's privacy. You bookmark things for a wide range of personal, nuanced reasons. And so I made a tweet thread, and the right journalist had retweeted it. And all like this CEO of TikTok follows these journalists, and I'm sure they saw it, and I'm sure this conversation spiraled because the next day they pulled back that favorites feature. Like, what if you see something? Call it out online. You're posting on these platforms and the CEOs are on it and they can see it. You never know.
Well, I think it's really interesting you bring that up because we have to remember that social media was built in a capitalist society. So what that means is that if the product is free, you are the product. Your time is your money, and those companies are selling your time to pay their bills. And I think we saw this with GameStop, which kind of speaks to the power of social media, is now we're kind of entering this world where social media actually has the ability to dictate the stock market. And so as social media executives have started to see what that's done to other companies, the role of global conversation in social media is actually so much more valuable than it ever has been in the history, I think, of just the economics in the world that we're living in. And so I'm always fascinated to see, just from brands and, why they make these decisions to pull back, because at the end of the day, all they're trying to do is protect their bottom line. And so it's fascinating. I'm interested to see how it unfolds, especially as we move more into Web3, which we haven't really gotten to that much. But as we go from this centralized world to the decentralized world and what digital well-being will look like, but that could be another day of conversations, I'm sure.
Yeah, man. Every time I try to get someone to explain to me, like, okay, Web3. It's like, even when they do Hollywood movie pitches, they're like, all right, we had 1, we had 2, and now we're going to make it bigger, better, whatever. And yeah, I still don't understand.
You know what's the simplest way to describe it? It's like all of us up here, pretend we're all Facebook, Instagram, right? We're in charge. We're like, all right, we're creating the privacy, the rules, we're responsible, XYZ. Web3 is all of you. It's like these 5 players finally kind of disperse because all of us and all of you in the audience are in charge of your own digital ecosystem and your own environments and your own communities. And so I think some of the questions that I like to ask and think about is, what does safety look like when we don't have a monopoly in charge of it, even though they don't always do the best job, but it's in the hands of all of us? What does social media addiction look like, right? When maybe we're not relying on the algorithms of the companies, but we're performing as these species that are naturally competitive in these other environments. And so I guess I would say, the easiest way to describe Web3 visually.
So are you saying, like, instead of expecting your produce to come from the grocery store, you learn how to grow your own food, sort of?
Yeah, but you're also in charge of it, I think. Like, people are in charge of their own domains. And how many of you here have been embedded in the Web3 space? No? A little bit?
Yeah.
Well, this is our next event. We're having the future of digital well-being in Web3.
Okay, there it is. Now check this out. This audience, I want y'all to stay exactly where you are because we're about to do something a little interesting. All 4 of these young people are going to they're going to find a seat in between people. Your responsibility is to offer an idea or someone that you can have them talk to about the things that you heard them say. They let you know where they would like to go, where the North Star is for whatever it is they're trying to do. So the only responsibility you have, offer an idea or someone that you can help them speak to get them where they are going. So we got a little bit of time here. So first of all, clap it up for them. So yes, find your way amongst the people and have this roundtable discussion. All right. So a microphone has been placed near all of our panelists. I'd like for them to take this opportunity to say a final word. What is one idea, resource, or anything you want to say for digital well-being? What's that one thing? So for if all our panelists can retrieve their mics so that they can say it to the entire room. What is the one thing, one digital well-being tip that you would want us all to leave here with tonight, along with all of the other activities and ideas that you have brought forward? So that one thing, go.
I think it would be for people to have more of a choice in their information being shared with this big tech companies and other companies that might use it for advertisements. And like, for example, it could happen that you're looking something up because you're curious, and then minutes later you're on your social media and an ad for that just pops up. And I don't think that's fair. That's good for people because it's like the sharing of information without your consent. And I don't think that that should be happening. I think people should have more of a choice in whether their information being shared or not. And then most big tech companies are just not giving you an option. They're like, if you use the platform, then this ends up happening. And it can be very tricky to prevent this from happening and sometimes impossible. Yeah.
All right now.
I don't think we have anything else to add, but I also want to like just plug some of the things that we heard from the group. Also, like The Social Dilemma is a really good documentary that you should all watch. And also, it's important to quantify and be true to yourself about your own personal social media usage. 'Cause sometimes it's very much underreported when it comes to us.
All right now. Thank you.
Is for enhancing the well-being, a person has to have a spot of land that sustains the life, and has to have a community, and also has to have access to technology. And we can consider ourselves a bridge because we are conscious about what's going on and the mess about nature and the mess of our existence. So we can be a bridge for the city to the countryside, and from the countryside to the city, to bring this balance, to educate people so that we can live in harmony. Thank you.
All right.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for everyone for showing up today, and that connects to my digital well-being tip, is to never underestimate the power that you hold to enact change, both in terms of how you're interacting with your devices and in terms of more systemic change. And if all of us can leave this space today and talk to a friend, talk to 5 friends, send a letter to your congressperson, take as many or as few steps as you want, whatever you're doing is creating a pathway towards a more sustainable and humane digital world. And thank you all for taking one of those many steps today and being here.
A species between worlds we are. We have built civilizations because we've learned how to build bridges and dig tunnels to create a pathway from one thing to another. And so I have no idea what bridges or tunnels that you all sat in these circles to start to build here today, but I pray that you will follow up and follow through. That if you made a commitment with an idea or a person or something, that you are the bridge between this beginning, activating, and coming into fruition. Because all we are is who we are between each other, and that's all we will ever be. So as we move between worlds, when we grow closer together and be the species we were always meant to be. Thank all of you for coming out here tonight. Thank all of our panelists for being amazing and showing us that the future has bright lanterns leading the way toward it. All of you have a good night. Security won't lock you in if you're out of here by 8 p.m., but if you are here after 8 p.m., you will be sleeping in this building overnight. So, take your time. See you soon.